Hey guys, welcome to this video. Today we're going to go over the different data groups and data types inside of Java. So I like to group up the different data types into four main groups, and they are whole numbers, decimal place numbers, characters and strings, and true or false values. So let's go over what the different data types are inside of each one of these groups. So for the whole numbers group, you got byte, short, int, and long. To create a variable or instantiate a variable or constructing a variable inside of Java, you first type in the variable data type. So you type in, for example, byte to declare a byte variable, and then you type in the variable name. You can name it whatever you want, but it has to start with a letter. You can't start variable names with a number. And for example, I'm going to name it variable 1, and then you can either create the variable this way and just end the line by typing in a semicolon, and this is, you create a variable called var1, and it is a byte, data type of byte, and the defaults to the default value, which is 0. Or you can actually just declare your own value for it. So you can say equals to, for example, 2, and then you can end the line with a semicolon, and that is perfectly valid as well. So you can do either one in either case. So the reason why there's 4 different data types inside of the whole numbers group, and you might be wondering, why are there 4 different data types when there can just be one? And let me exactly explain why. So the reason why is that they can store a different amount of numbers each. They have a different range of number storage each. So for bytes, you can store from a range of -128 to 127. So the total range is 256 numbers, or 2 to the 8th. And the reason why we call bytes byte is they're actually 8 bits inside of a byte, so you can store 2 to the 8th or 2 to the 8 bits, and that's equal to 256, and that gives you a range of -128 to 127. If I go over that range and I say 200, it's gonna give me an error because I can only store up to 127. So just keep that in mind. And the reason why you can store exactly one more number inside of the negative range instead of the positive range is because 0 is also counted, and 0 happens to be the it counts towards the positive sense. So the range is only 256 numbers. You can store -128 to +127. If you try for if you try for -129, it's going to give you an error. If you try for +129, it's going to give you an error. You can only store up to 127, not 128 instead of bytes. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to keep it at 8 to denote the number of bits. And then you also have shorts, which are the same exact thing, but you can store up to 16 bits. You got ints, which are the same exact thing, which can just store 32 bits. And you got longs, which are the same exact thing as the other ones, but you can store to 64 bits. And yeah, longs are the largest one. You can store a really big number in there. Ints are going to be probably the most commonly used. Shorts are also going to be another one that's used pretty frequently. Just depends on your usage. If you want to store only up to 128 numbers, you can use a byte, and this is just for like saving space on your machine or saving RAM and other memory things inside of your computer. So if you don't want your program to use up that much memory, make sure to use something that has a smaller footprint. So now we go to the decimal place numbers, and you got floats and doubles. They're the same exact thing as the whole numbers above. You can create all the variable types this way. Just type in the name of the data type of the variable, give it a decimal name, and then give it a default value, or just end the line with a semicolon. So you can just do float var5. You can end it there, or you can give it a default value. I'm going to give it a default value of 12.0. And oh no, there's an error. And that's the thing is with floats, you got to type an F at the very end, and that's how you denote floats from regular numbers. I'm not sure why you have to do that, but it's just of convention. You can also do 12F, and that will just default to a float. If you actually print this out, and I'm hoping you already know how to print variables out. If you print this, if you don't know how to print out, I made a tutorial on that in my channel, but if you print this out, it defaults to 12.0, even though we typed in 12, because floats and doubles automatically default to having a decimal place value, even if you don't specify it. And you can store a really big number in here, so you don't really need to pay attention to how large of a number you store in there, because you can store a bigger number inside of floats than you can in longs. So if I posted this same exact number from float into a long, it errors because this is way too large of a number for longs to handle. So that's larger than 2 to the 64. divided by 2. So this is a really big number. So you don't worry about how much numbers you can store in floats or doubles. So double is going to be the same exact thing as a float, except you don't need to specify the f at the end, and you just have to specify a decimal place like that, and then you're good to go. You can also specify d for double if you want to, but that's not necessary. You can skip that, or you can store it if you want. And the difference between double and float is that, for example, the difference between byte and short is that bytes can store 2 to the 8th, and then shorts can store 2 to the 16. Double is the same exact thing as float, where it can store double the amount of bits that float can store. But that's a really big number, and we don't really need to get into that. It's just, it can just store a lot. So whatever number you want to store, you can store into either float or double. And if float isn't enough for whatever large number you're trying to use a double instead. So characters and strings, this should be pretty obvious. Characters are, you create a character by saying char, and then you give it a variable name, same as the other ones, and you can default it like this as well, or you can give it a value. The thing with chars is that you gotta use single quotation marks, and then you gotta use just one character. If you try to use 2 letters in there, it's not gonna work. If you try to use double quotation, it's not going to work. So you got to make sure to use single quotation and only specify one letter or one number or any character that you want. And then string is going to be the same thing. String is actually not one of the default data types inside of Java, but it's used commonly, used very frequently. So I'm going to include that in this video as well. And a string is basically just an array of chars. An array is like a group. So if you don't know what an array is, that's going to be covered in a later video. Basically, you can see it's not highlighted as blue, as because it's not really built into Java. It's like an appended thing, and we can go over that more in depth later on. But you can just realize that strings are the same thing as chars, that you can store as many characters as you want inside of them. And then we got booleans, which are just true or false value. You declare them by doing the same exact thing as the different variables above. And you can either default it, which defaults to false, or you can give the value and you just type in either true or false. Keywords, true and false, are reserved in Java, so you can just type them in exactly the word. You don't have to type in the string false, and in fact that will actually give you an error. And you have to give it a lowercase false, or else if you use capital case, it's also going to give you an error. And I keep messing up my keyboard there. But yeah, make sure it's lowercase, and then you're good to go. Type in true or false, and that's exactly how it works. And these can store up to 1 bit, so it's just 0 or 1, and that's exactly how this works. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or comments, post them down in the comments down below. Feel free to subscribe and also leave a like and favorite. Thank you guys for watching.